Did you ever feel like you are cheating in a trading card game, especially in Flesh and Blood? So today's video is all about the hilarious rule update that just came to Flesh and Blood TCG, and we will also compare it to other hilarious rules that needed to be implemented in other card games just like Yu-Gi-Oh! So let's jump into the video. Actually, I think rules are very important, right? And they are, the foundation for every competitive player that wants to play in a tournament, especially in a competitive game like Flesh and Blood. I would be really happy if you can relate to any of the topics that we are talking about in today's video by commenting down below. Because I think some of these rule changes, especially the one that we are talking about in Flesh and Blood, needed to be done because, there were some tricky situations on tournaments in the past. And they want to make it a little bit easier for both players and judges on those tournaments in Flesh and Blood. So I'm very interested to hear your comments. But now let's jump into the rule update on fabtcg.com. So you can find the article right on the FabTCG website, and that one is written by Joshua Scott. Shout out to you, Josh. And basically what they are saying is that they are making a few changes to note-taking, the game layout, and outside assistance. And what that means, we will see it in a short period of time. But basically they are saying that, they want to make it as comfortable as possible. Beautiful artwork here between from photo and splicing, but they want to make it as convenient for everyone involved in the game. And also they are talking about their general philosophy here with those kind of topics that they introduce on the top, especially the one with note taking and the aids. The use of aids to record information during the game, and that is something very important, right? Let's jump though into that general philosophy because Flesh and Blood describes it here as they want to challenge their players, for their mind. They want to know and see who has the most capacity on their mind. I mean, they even write it down in this article. They say Flesh and Blood is a skill testing game, and one of those skills is a player's memory. So not only Flesh and Blood is a fighting game, but now Flesh and Blood is a game to test the skill of a player's memory. And I think if you've played Flesh and Blood in the past, or you are just starting, you can really relate to that because you need to remember a lot of things during a game of Flesh and Blood. Flesh and Blood is not like other TCGs, and we will talk about one or the other rule in a short period of time that is, for example, in Yu-Gi-Oh! And Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a very different game compared to Flesh and Blood. For Yu-Gi-Oh! You also need to have a big memory, but the memory that you need to have for Flesh and Blood is a little bit different. You need to really think about a lot of things during a long period of the game, and especially when you're going into fatigue. You need to remember a lot of things. And this article really clarifies some of those things that you are allowed to take notes on, or that you are allowed to track with certain things like dices or reordering your graveyard, for example. And then in the end they also talk about what you are allowed to write down as a note on your playmat and stuff like that. I think that's pretty hilarious. It's pretty funny. So with that out of the way, I think that is basically what this first part of the article is. If you want to read it all, just go to fabtcg.com and read it all. This video is not about just reading out this article, but in the end here of this first section, I think this is pretty important because with the introduction of the last set, Rosetta, there were a few heroes that needed to decompose. And if you're new to Flesh and Blood, this will be a little bit confusing to you, but essentially you needed to know what kind of cards are in your graveyard to get that decompose off and then get additional value of your hero's ability, just like with Florian, the Rodwood Harbinger. And he says if there are 8 or more Earth cards in your banish zone, Florian gets, if you would create 1 or more aura tokens, instead create that many plus 1 of each of those tokens. So at first you needed to get 8 Earth cards in your banish zone, and that is possible through cards like Felling of the Crown that you're playing out, and then you're using the effect Decompose, and when that attack goes off, you banish 2 earth cards and an action card from a graveyard. So you need to make sure you have those cards in your graveyard. So that's not a problem, right? You can just look at your graveyard, but some people like to order the cards in the graveyard. And we will talk about specifically that here in the article, because they are saying for purposes like this, that helps to clarify the game state, it is possible to sort cards in your graveyard just for, stuff like decompose. But you can just sort your graveyard as you like, for example, with the pitch color or by attack reactions and attack actions and stuff like that. That's not really allowed if it's not relevant to your game state. And I don't know, I never did that. I never sorted my graveyard for attack reactions, but or for command and conquers. There is a line here in the end, if you scroll down, that specifically says, can I use a dice to track the number of command and conquers in my opponent's graveyard? And I thought, like, who is doing that? Honestly, guys, that is not really relevant. And that's why it is not allowed. It is prohibited. So another thing that you want to make sure you track, though, is your counters that you have on your Tunic. And you can just use a dice for that, right? You can use a lot of dices and also tokens and Flesh and Blood. You really need to do that because there's a lot of going on the board. And it is not allowed, though, that you remind yourself that you not forget your Tunic trigger by tattooing it on your hand. That's pretty funny, right? Which trading card game doesn't allow for that? Oh, guys, it's so funny, right? I couldn't really get it if I read this article. It's so funny. But let me know how you are making sure you're not forgetting your Tunic counters. But it is also not allowed, and I think that is something that needs to be talked about, because in Flesh and Blood, a lot of players like to use custom sleeves, custom playmats, and stuff like that. And so it is not allowed actually to write "Don't forget your Tunic" printed on your playmat, and it's also not allowed to print it on your sleeves. Or putting an oversized dice on your Tunic that, is so big that nothing else is really watchable on the equipment zone. It is also not allowed, to place your Tunic anywhere else on the board, and also creating a reminder card and leaving it in the arena, so it has to be removed before playing cards. That's also not allowed. So you can't just leave stuff on the board that is not really in there for the game, but just because you need to remind yourself of certain things. That's not allowed. And I think that is actually pretty good that they are writing this down in this rule and making sure that everybody is aware of this. And so in the future, you will for sure get a warning if you do stuff like this. I think also what is really important here, we talked about it in the upper part of the article. They are also clarifying, like, it is possible that you are tracking earthen actions for decompose, you are tracking red cards for burn them all, blood depth cards in your banish zone, stuff like that. That is relevant to the game state or for relevant effects. But it is not possible, to order cards by other stuff. And I was like, I wasn't aware of this, that it is not allowed to reorder the graveyard. And I was thinking about maybe it is also not allowed in other card games. And I watched a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh games, and I know that some Yu-Gi-Oh players really like to lay out their graveyard, for example, and that they are always going through the graveyard. And so I just Googled it. Is it possible to reorder cards in the graveyard for Yu-Gi-Oh? And it's actually not. It is not allowed. So this article here on Reddit says it all. So yes, it is, as you are, not allowed to change the order of your graveyard, and you cannot have reminders of optional effects, just like in Flesh and Blood. And it also, if you read the official Konami rulebook, it also, will be here down in this section here. Actually, let's make this a little bit bigger so we can see that. When monster cards are destroyed and when spell and trap cards are used, they are sent face up to this space, to the graveyard. The contents of both players' graveyards are public knowledge, just like in Flesh and Blood. And your opponent can look through yours at any time during the duel. But, now this is the important stuff. The order of the cards in the graveyard should not be changed, just like in Flesh and Blood. So, let's jump back to Flesh and Blood. I think though, we talked about this additional information like with cards, so placing your Tunic reminder card on the board is not allowed, but there are certain cards that you need to take additional notes on, and they are writing especially this year for cards like Censor, for example, or Warmonger's Diplomacy, where you are deciding on something and then you need to make sure that this information is still in the game. And so you can write down a named card, for example. So if you're playing Censor and it hits a hero, you can name a card, and that card you can write down. That's legal. Okay, let's go. Also for Warmonger's Diplomacy, for example, you can track what kind of option you choose. For example, if you choose war, you can write down war. Or if you choose peace, you can write down peace. And also for cards that need to be taken care of, that are in the graveyard but still have effects on the board in the next turn, just like Red in the Ledger, for example. This card, when it hits, your opponent can only play or activate one action during the next turn. So you can just leave Red and Ledger just to the side of the graveyard, and that is a legal play. I sometimes just give my opponent the Red and the Ledger, actually. I'm not sure if that is legal off of this new rule that Flesh and Blood just has, but I think so. And also they are clarifying in this article that you should just ask your head judge if you have questions about this. And I think that is very nice that you can do that, right? You can just ask before doing stuff. And also here they have some examples again that you can track. For example, how many attack action cards have hit already. For Mask of Momentum, you can also write down how many lightning cards you've played for Vosa. Those are some nice examples of cards that you can keep track of or write stuff down. So it is perfectly fine to use note-taking to ensure that the game is being played correctly and that no one else is forgetting these kind of things. Just hilarious, right? Thinking about if on this on this Matt would just say, don't forget your Tunic counter or trigger, and then with an arrow here right to the chest, right? That would be so amazing. I'm not sure if a playmat like this exists. Let me know in the comments if you know about this. But actually, I think talking about this hilarious rule update, there were 2 rule updates that I'm not sure if you guys know even in Yu-Gi-Oh! I need to switch here for a second because there are 2 rules that are pretty crucial in Yu-Gi-Oh! And I just want to talk about it. The first one is pretty obvious, and honestly, you might know this all. Maybe you know this, this picture. I'm not sure actually from which year this picture is, but maybe it stands here in this article. It's actually 2 German guys that did this. A German regional tournament for Yu-Gi-Oh! 2 players, or a person was abusing the maximum deck size ruling and brought a deck of 2,222 cards. Oh my goodness, to the tournament. And actually, here is a photo of the deck list that they registered. And that was basically the time that I needed to change the rule size for the maximum deck size. And that's why every game also has it, I think. I'm not sure if any other game, did have this rule before, but I think that is just so funny. And then another rule that I hope we never get in Yu-Gi-Oh! In Flesh and Blood, that we have in Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually, is the rule that came in early 2019. And sorry guys, this article is in German, but I will just tell you what it is all about. It is a rule done by Konami because I can actually, I make sure this rule is actually right because I was in a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournaments and it was nasty. I just can tell you that. Because this rule basically says every player at the tournament needs to have or wear, appropriate clothes that are not, smelling to the moon, and also that the person themselves is not smelling badly. And I think it's so funny that actually Konami needed to make this rule to ensure that players actually stick to this rule and not banning people, because they were smelling badly from their Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournaments. I hope, guys, we will never get this rule in Flesh and Blood, and that you're all taking a shower in the morning before going to the tournament, and that you also have a chewing gum with you during the tournament, or you're using deodorant or something like that. But I think this topic was definitely worth talking about, and I'm very curious now on your comments. Also, leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, and check out some of the other videos here at the Fabled Academy. Thank you so much, guys. See you in the next one.